Hi, and welcome to 4 Hours of Eat on Semrush. I'm Jason Barnard. I'm going to be your host for the first 3 parts. This is a 4-hour session, mega webinar. I'll be here hosting for the first 3 and then speaking alongside Andrea and Dave Davis for the 4th part. But we're going to start with what is eat and why is it so very important. What I love about this 4-hour series is that I got to set the titles and ask the questions I wanted to ask and get people like Jennifer, Marie Haynes, who'll be on later on, Jono Alderson, Andrea Volpini and Dave Davis to explain it all to me. And to you, in fact. Speaking of which, you can also ask your questions. Anybody in the audience, if you want to ask a question, pop it in the chat on YouTube. It will come through to us, and Jennifer, in this particular one, or Casey, or Rick, will answer the question. So feel free to ask questions. We're really looking forward to hearing them. Before we get going, I'm going to quickly introduce everybody. I'm Jason Barnard. I'm called the Brand SERP guy because I'm obsessed with brand SERPs. That will keep coming back. And if I get boring about it, anybody who's in the chat watch clan, keeping an eye on us, like Simon Cox, for example, I think Craig Campbell's out there as well, tell me to shut up. That's absolutely fine. We're going to start off with Jennifer Slegg. Lovely to meet you, Jen, again. You've been in this since 1999, 20 years with just one company, and it's your company.
Yes.
I think that's brilliant. And you run the SEM post.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and that's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I love writing about search and SEO stuff and quality rater guidelines.
Oh, right, yeah, we're lucky really, because that's what we're talking about today. You're in California and you love the X-Files, which is very 90s, isn't it?
It is. Still my favorite, though.
Oh, right, okay.
I'm old school.
All right. And Casey was talking about watching an episode of Friends earlier on, so he's very 90s too. Also in SEO since 1999. Media-wise, same thing, same company for 20 years, man. Brilliant.
Yeah, you know, it's easier for me to work for myself, and I can only disappoint one person on a regular basis. So I figured that was the way to go.
And you specialize in food and food, lifestyle, and DIY. So I've written it onto the screen.
I'm a site auditor by training. So, I mean, I've audited sites, thousands of sites over the 20 plus years. But since about 2016, I've been focusing exclusively with food, lifestyle, and do-yourself bloggers, mostly because I like food. So that's helped.
Oh, okay.
It's good. It's a good lineup with expertise.
And you have a wonderful lifestyle. Brilliant. Rick is the third invitee, or the third panelist. Only been in SEO since 2014. I say only because I can follow that up with became very quickly the SEO director at Prospect and now at Yext, which is really impressive, man.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride so far. Lots of really cool stuff I've been able to work on.
A fun and fast
I feel
ride.
Yeah, I mean, like against 2 absolute titans of the industry, I feel like I'm perhaps the less experienced, but hopefully I've still got something interesting to say.
Oh, I know you do, because you're one of my fave people, because you wrote about your brand SERP, Rick Rodriguez, and there's loads of confusion. And I looked again this afternoon, and you own it now. You really nailed it.
I try my best.
Absolutely brilliant. You absolutely own your SERP. I've seen Jen's got these wonderful Twitter boxes on her brand SERP. So now I can pass with that beautiful segue I just made up. Jen, with her Twitter boxes, which make her incredibly EAT friendly, was now going to give us the talk about what is it, and why is it so phenomenally important. And remember, if any questions occur to you as she's talking, pop them in the chat and we'll answer them afterwards. Thank you for joining us. Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you. So all about EAT and why it is important. So a little bit about me. Jennifer Slegg, the SEM post. You can find me at Jenstar on Twitter, where I tweet all kinds of Google things, SEO things, quality rater guideline things, and of course EAT, which is what we're talking about today. So what are the quality rater guidelines? It's basically Google's guide to sites that they want to see ranking really well as the types of sites they want to not see ranking well. So it's kind of like a who's who of the best and who's who of the worst. It also enables Google to test their algos before they actually push them live out to the search results, which is, a good thing because not all of their search algos they dream up actually work in reality when they push them live. A couple quick facts about the quality raters. No, a quality rater who works for your competitor cannot cause your site's rankings to drop in any way, shape, or form. They have absolutely no control over how your site appears in the search results. That said, if a lot of quality raters are rating your site poorly, chances are pretty good that Google's working on algos that will match that so that your site won't rank very well in the future, if it is ranking at all right now. Quick facts about the raters. In 2017, there was 200,000 experiments with 2,400 updates. In 2018, which is the most recent numbers we have so far, 650,000 experiments and over 3,200 updates. So when, the search industry is freaking out because it looks like there's been some sort of algo change or an update happening, and, people inevitably tweet Danny or Gary or John and we're like, is there an update? And they can say probably. This is why, because with 3,200 updates happening a year, there's bound to be at least something happening on the day you think you see a search algo change. Obviously, some are bigger than others. Some are tiny little tweaks that you might only affect like a small percentage of the search results. But, that's a huge amount of updates that are happening every year. There's 10,000 quality raters. They're not just English. They're not just US. It covers many, many countries and languages. So just because your country isn't as well known or your language isn't as well known doesn't mean that there's not raters actively, looking at the search results and seeing how the quality is happening there. Pro tip, this is something a lot of people don't realize because the leaked versions of the quality rater guidelines, you could not click through any of the examples, but the newer ones, you can click through all the examples. And yes, you may find some of your sites in the examples. I've talked to more than a few people who have found their sites listed under the what not to do examples. And if you end up with your site in there, even if you go and make it, completely awesome, that example is going to live on in the quality rater guidelines for a very, very long time. So Ben Gomes, who's the VP of Search at Google, he says, you can view the rater guidelines as where we want the search algo to go. They don't tell you how the algo is ranking results, but it shows you what the algo should be doing and where it's going. So now let's get into the EAT stuff. So what is EAT? It stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, which is a very wordy mouthful, which is why we all refer to it as EAT or EAT. I call it EAT simply because when you're doing presentations like this and you say EAT 30 million times, it also becomes quite tongue twistery too. So expertise. It refers to the expertise of the creator of the main content, basically the author of the article or the creator of an image or whoever made the podcast. Whatever the content is, it's the person who created it. So why should I trust the author of this content? What makes this author knowledgeable? How well known is this author? Who else is promoting this author? Who else thinks this author is awesome? Then we get into authoritativeness, and this goes into a more, oversight of the entire thing. So it's the authoritativeness of the creator of the main content itself, and the website. So it's kind of like the whole package deal of an overview of what they're looking at. It's not just the author, it's the whole shebang. So is the author an authority in the field? What about the website? Is the website well known and considered to be an authority in the market area? Is it popular? Is it well known? And then we have trustworthiness. And this refers to the trustworthiness, again, it's the all-encompassing thing, the creator of the main content, the content itself, and the website. Why should I trust this author? Why should I believe what this author has to say? Why should I believe anything on this website is true? Who else has vouched for it, linked to it, or otherwise supported this author or this website? Basically, why should I believe and trust what is on this site? Okay, so, but how does this translate into rankings, which is like the million-dollar question? Gary Ish at PubCon last year said there is no EAT score or metric used in the SERPs. So there is no like handy dandy little number you can reach for like in the mobile rankings the mobile speed results, for example. There's no score metric you can aim for. However, he also says improving EAT does not necessarily increase rankings. It depends, and there's many factors at play. Okay, so if EAT's not a ranking factor, why are we bothering it? Why are SEOs so laser focused on EAT? This is what Danny tweeted also last year. He says it's not a direct ranking factor, again, like that's measured like speed, but they use a variety of signals as a proxy to tell if the content seems to match EAT as humans would assess it. And then he says, in that regards, yes, it's a ranking factor. Gary went kind of into a little bit more detail and revealed that EAT is actually a bunch of baby algorithms that work together, and it's conceptualizing EAT metrics. So in that regard, there kind of is a metric that we're aiming for, but in terms of the search results, it's a bunch of things that are coming together to conceptualize what we refer to as EAT. He also said that EAT and your money or life are concepts for humans to dumb down the algo. So we have to remember that quality raters, they're not SEOs. They're not people who are in the search industry. They're people like our parents or our brothers or sisters or our best friends. They're people who are kind of somewhat website savvy. So, they know how to, click on a link and stuff like that. But they're not people that can go and view source code and understand what on earth they're looking at. So they're more like your average searcher. Raters are not like well-versed like you and I are. I went to the Google Webmaster Summit in Mountain View last year, and they talked quite a bit about the quality rater guidelines. And one thing they specifically said is, what we value? It's in the quality rater guidelines. And what is it? EAT. And they said they use it as their ground truth to figure out what's a good quality result for their users. And then actually Marie Haynes noticed this change that was made to Google's core updates blog post. They made this change last month. And they're also talking about, is EAT a ranking factor? And again, they're talking about, they're using it conceptually for signals that the automated systems use to rank content. So, again, website owners should be considering how EAT is impacting their site. Your money, your life, and EAT. So your money, your life are topics that impact happiness, health, financial stability, safety of users. And these types of sites are held to a much higher standard. So just a very quick look. News and current events, civics, government and law, finance, anything shopping, health and safety. This encompasses everything that's any kind of like medical or health related, diet related, anything that affects a person's health. Groups of people, and other, which pretty much can encompass like all kinds of random topics, as long as it falls under like the health, safety, and financial well-being of searchers. And I do make a note that if you sell anything at all, whether it's products or services, you're considered your money and your life, and you are held to this higher standard. This is because Google is sending searchers to your website, and they want to know that your website is trustworthy enough, because you are basically customers are handing over their credit card information, their personal information, and that's why Google is holding all types of shopping sites to this higher standard. And just a quick note, if you're dealing with unproven medical claims, debunked conspiracy theories, anything that contradicts, well-established expert consensus. So if you're trying to say like some wacky thing, like if you drink bleach, it's going to cure your cancer or something crazy like this, you're going to have a very, very hard time ranking. And that's because of this whole your money, your life thing. So EAT is crucial for all your money of your life, all your money, your life sites. And Google weighs those EAT factors a lot higher for these types of sites. And this also does include links. It's not as critical for your money, your life. If you have a knitting blog or something like that, it's not as critical that you have, a whole lot of EAT on your site. It's obviously good if you have some EAT, especially if you want people to share it. But it's not like super, super critical like it is as if you're selling something. And, Gary reiterated this at PubCon last year, where he says increasing your EAT is probably going to be a good thing if you're in the YMYL space. So how important is EAT? It's important to think that EAT is important relative to your market area. So you want to have EAT that's similar to your competitors. If you're competing against, say, Walmart, for example, you're going to need a whole lot of EAT. But if you're competing, against local businesses or something in a smaller niche market, you really only need to have the similar amount of EAT as what your competitors have, or ideally more. And as you work on your EAT, it's also important because you can work on becoming the big brand in your space, or at least becoming a bigger, well-known brand in your space. And just to reiterate again, your money, your life, it is super important. And another bonus, as you're increasing your EAT, you're going to earn more EAT organically, because as you become more well-known, as people become more trusted in your site, they're going to share it more, they're going to link it more, they're going to talk about it more, and so you're going to end up earning even more EAT over time. So what makes high quality EAT? These are just some quick things. Well-researched content. Obviously, Google wants to make sure that they're sending searchers to content that's high quality, well-researched, reputable authors known for their accuracy and high quality, and content that has, again, the consensus of health and other controversial topics. And I also include evergreen or current content on here, because a lot of people think, oh, only current content can have high EAT, or only evergreen content can have high EAT, but it actually applies to both of them. The only recommendation I do make here is if you have evergreen content, say it was written 5 years ago, someone can land on that content and get the impression that, oh, it was written 5 years ago, it's probably out of date. Even though it might be completely accurate, you do want to go and, make a notation on it that, reviewed in 2020 or updated in 2020, just to give people that reassurance that, hey, I can definitely still trust this content, even though it was originally published 5 years ago, because, hey, this person I trust has gone and reviewed it again. Now, what are the ways you can show off as well as create high quality EAT? So something I like to do is what I call dual biographies for authors. What I do is on the article itself, I do a condensed version of a biography. Like I've seen some people where they go so overboard for this that there's, an article that's like 6 paragraphs long and then the bio is like 8 paragraphs long. That's not what you want to be doing. You want to basically have a shorter, condensed, basically the highlights of that author on the actual article, and then go and link through to a further, more detailed bio page where you can go and put, everything about the author that, couldn't fit in the paragraph, links to other articles they've written, other ways you can show off their expertise. And you can even go and highlight specifically on the condensed version that appears on the articles, tailor it to each individual article. So if it's about some particular segment of a topic, you can highlight why they're an expert in that segment instead of just overall. It's what I call dress to impress. Make sure you're showing off your authors, social media links, awards, quotes, accolades. Basically, you want to showcase their awesomeness. Now, a lot of writers, including myself, we don't really like to talk about ourselves. And, we always have a struggle when it comes to writing an author bio. So sometimes you'll kind of have to do some Google searches on your authors, or kind of poke them and be like, hey, what is something, awesome you've done in this last year? Or, hey, I love this article. Where did you get your inspiration for it? Or just kind of see if you can get some interesting information out of your authors that you can showcase on their bio pages. This is just a really good example. 1 paragraph, super short, but basically, right when you start reading it, you're like, this is an author I can trust. She's written for the New York Times, Popular Science. She has a book published that won awards for the Columbia Journalism School and Harvard University. She's won social justice journalism awards. Basically, this author bio tells me, bam, this person knows what they're talking about and is someone I should trust. Something I do want to mention as well is make sure you're using the same bio photo for all your authors that they use everywhere else. Because especially in the industry space, people might not necessarily recognize the name, but they recognize the photo if they use the same photo everywhere. I see some sites, they're like, oh no, but we want all our authors to have black and white photos or be standing with a brick wall behind them. And for me, when you want that brand recognition and author authority, you want people to be able to instantly recognize the photo that they might not recognize if the person is taken out of the context of recognizable. If you are the author yourself and you're wanting to kind of increase your own authority, be active on social media. Share, don't just retweet other people's stuff, but also like tweet your own thoughts on something that's happening in the industry. Just ways you can showcase that, hey, I'm tweeting this stuff and I do know what I'm talking about. Engage with influencers. Like, don't be super annoying and respond to like every single thing an influencer has to say. But here and there, like if they say something and you have something to contribute to the conversation, definitely do engage with influencers. Also consider well-placed collaborations or contributions. So talk to like the high-profile sites in your space and see if you can contribute to their sites, whether it's an article. Don't write the article to showcase yourself, because you need to remember that these sites are looking for ways to, they want to make themselves look better, not necessarily the author better. So, don't say, hey, I'll write this for a link or anything like that that screams of, hey, guest blog post for payment kind of thing. But make sure that you have something to contribute to the sites you're wanting to contribute to. And make sure you have either a personal or a company website so people can find you and you can showcase all the places you write for example. Renting an author for EAT. So this kind of came on the radar last year, and a lot of people are like, hey, I can just write this crappy article and then I'll pay this author $100 and to put their byline. It doesn't quite work that way. But if you do get popular authors to write with you, you're going to get the traffic from their shares. You're going to get traffic from their author searches when they do a search for the author and find your site. And you're going to get earned links because that author is already an authority. And then that's going to, give authority to your site as well. Author entities. Here's Danny, he says, we don't have a list of authors. Like, just because my name's on a page doesn't mean it's automatically going to rank better, for example. But Gary did say that very popular authors will have entities. It's not about the author, but about the entity. So if you have, a search result for your author's name and it highlights, the Twitter thing or a knowledge graph, that's considered entity. The website me, especially if you are a non-brand, you need a good About Us page. Be transparent, show off your history, who started the company, show off your team if you have multiple people that work for you, show off your spotlight authors, so the most popular authors or the most authoritative authors you have on your site. Make sure you have contact us page. And if you're selling anything, if you're Your Money, Your Life, make sure you have customer service contacts. So here's an example just from LL Bean. This is their contact us page. Basically, they have 5 different ways that you can get a hold of them. Here's their phone number. Here's how you can chat with us. Here's how you can email us. Here's how we will actually call you back instead of you having to wait on hold. And other numbers if you're looking for some sort of department. And then they have frequently asked questions where there are a ton of different ways that they're offering self-service help as well. I love including this example in my slides because I look at this and I'm like, that looks straight out of Front Page 2000. But this is in the Quality Reader Guidelines as an example of a really good quality About Us page, even though it looks horrible, because it basically says everything you need to know about this company. So, reputation. This is from the Quality Reader Guidelines. Use reputation research to find what real users as well as experts think of a website. Look for reviews, references, recommendations by experts, news articles, and other credible information created and written by individuals about the website. The important thing to know is every single page that a quality rater comes across, whether it's a page or a website in the search results, they're required to do a reputation research on the pages and the sites. And a lot of people don't realize this because a lot of people aren't so sure how their reputation actually is online. So a lot of people will just do a vanity search for their company name to see kind of, what people are saying. But, they might go 2 pages deep and they don't look further than that. But when you're doing a reputation health check, especially for people that are doing searches for you, this isn't just quality raters, but it's customers as well. They're going to do a search for your company name. They're going to do a search for your popular products names, but they're going to look for also keywords for reviews, ratings. If you're in a your money or your life area, they're probably going to check for fake or scam. So make sure you're doing searches for like company name scam or product name scam and see what comes up. And a lot of times people are pretty surprised at what they find. Also do reputation checks on your content creators. You know, Google their name, Google their handle, whatever their Twitter handle is, or the handle they use for online communication. Also check for duplicate content because, yeah, you can be surprised. And reverse image search their avatar if it's a personal picture and see what else it pops up. Why I mention this is because we've all seen examples of companies that they have who they think is a really good author, and then someone does a Google search on them and finds, oh, hey, they're a white supremacist or something. And then the company, you know, becomes under fire because they hired this writer. So you definitely want to make sure that it's not just your website you have to worry about. Anyone who's creating content for you that has their name on your site, you're responsible for their reputation as well. So always check it. And I often say, you know, every 6 months, just go into a recheck of all your content creators and make sure they haven't become really volatile in the meantime. Third-party mentions. Links are not necessary, but mentions are really good. And why I want to mention this is because a lot of times people think, oh, but they didn't link to me, it's not going to count. Well, we do know that Google is looking for ways to track third-party mentions. It's not necessarily just links alone, but you can have a lot of traffic that comes just from mentions. I had a client who was complaining that they were mentioned in this news story, but they didn't get a link and they were all upset. And then I'm like, well, look at your analytics. You have all this traffic that suddenly came in from people searching for your company name and your product name. And pretty sure that's all related exactly to the fact that people were searching from that news article and found them that way. News stories. News stories are great. And again, it doesn't have to necessarily be linked, but we also know that when it comes to news stories, a lot of news sites now will no longer link out. They will only link with a no follow if they link at all. But again, it's third-party mention. So anyone who's doing a search for your company that wants to find out more about your company, they are going to be searching for these news stories. So again, doesn't matter if it's linked to you or not, as long as they're saying like awesome stuff for you, obviously. And again, reviews. And any other mentions you can earn, you know, sponsor a sports team, sponsor a community event, donations. Like, think of ways to get your name out there. The only caveat is, you know, be wary of the donate $100 and get a link kind of thing, because Google doesn't like those. But, you know, it's a lot of ways you can sponsor things, especially for local businesses or just things in your local community that can get you good press. Bonuses of third-party mentions, obviously the whole EAT aspect, but it can boost your credibility and it expands your brand recognition. You're basically getting your name out there. Referrals, like I was saying, you know, you can get a lot of referrals even when it's not linked. And then you have the opportunity to, you know, be able to say, hey, we were seen on, you know, CNN or, you know, People Magazine or whatever your market area is, and you can brag about that on your site as well. And that brings us to links. So this is from one of Google's documents, and they say, you know, how are we assessing expertise, authority, and trustworthiness? And they say they have lots of signals, but the best known of these signals is PageRank, which uses links to determine authoritativeness. And this is something else they've recently published, and it's about quality of content. And they say Google trusts sites that are linked from other prominent sites in whatever your market area is. But the one thing that's important to note here is the term Google uses, we look for sites that many users seem to value for similar queries. So they're not just looking for prominent sites for like what your chosen keywords are, but they're also looking for similar queries. So AKA, don't just focus on your money keywords, because there's a lot of value in other keywords as well. Ratings and reviews. Everyone's going to have negative reviews. Like, whether you like it or not, the most awesomest company in the world is going to have some negative reviews. So you don't need to, if you have a few of them, don't worry about it. It's when they're overwhelmingly negative that then there's a problem. Then you have to start thinking about what you can do to kind of remedy this problem. If you have those few negative reviews, respond to them with facts. Don't respond with them with passion. Like, if you read it and you're like, oh my God, rah, 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 and are ready to freak out, step back for a day and like come back tomorrow, and then, respond with, here's the facts of the situation. And so you're not so angsty and might say something you regret. Be the source. Google wants to promote, original reporting, and they stress original reporting that provides info that would not have been known without the article being published. So it doesn't matter what your market area is or what your topic is. See what you can do for publishing something that's so original that no one else has ever published it before, and that is so awesome, other people are going to end up citing it and linking to it. And the other thing is also, if you're publishing this awesome original reporting, but you're referencing some other person's research, make sure you link to them as well. It's good practices to link to your sources, and it shows that, hey, this person has published this. This is an authority, and then people are going to come back. Oh, well, I can probably trust this person too. And just some final food for thought. Would you trust the article or trust the author of your most popular article on your site? Would you trust the content of your most important article? The article you want to rank the most, not necessarily, the most popular one, but the one that you kind of like wish would rank #1 for its keywords. Would you like what the leaders in your industry are saying about your site? If not, what can you do to improve that perception? Can you work with them? What can you do to make them, think you're more awesomer than they currently do? And do you like what leaders in your industry say about your authors, the ones that you're promoting as well? And would you like the search results if you went and did a reputation search for your brand, especially when you're looking for scam or fake? If not, like, what can you do to improve them? Or respond to them, or make it so it's not so bad if anyone is searching for it for your company. Now, here's a whole bunch of sources if you want to like deep dive even more into EAT and the Quality Rater Guidelines. And thank you.
Absolutely brilliant, Jen. Thank you very much. Superb. You've made me very happy because you said search for your brand name about 20 times in that presentation, and that's what I'm trying to get people to do. What strikes me there is how human this has all become compared to what we were looking at 10 years ago. We're looking at people rating the quality and people researching, those people researching our brands and our authors and our content to see if it's quality. And that for me is human. And that's really encouraging. And I think the examples you gave and the practical tips you gave certainly taught me a lot. So I'm going to go away and rewrite my bio. Thank you very much. Because what I say about myself isn't necessarily what bigs me up and backs me up the most.
Yeah.
And
I think we all have that problem because we don't like to brag about ourselves. We're really uncomfortable, like, shining a spotlight on ourselves. And
yeah, I had a chat with a guy called Deepak Shukla who told me to stop being embarrassed about it and just say it.
Yeah.
And we're in that kind of way. I know, Rick, you work with a lot of local companies, and we've had questions about kind of the local aspect, especially the offline. Yeah. If you're an offline company, what can you do?
So I think it's an interesting one. If we talk about offline being, you've got brick and mortar businesses, actually this transcends, like how people talk about you online transcends anything you do online. If you're going into your stores and people are having fantastic experiences because the staff are friendly, knowledgeable, you have a great range of products, and actually you focus on that experience, that transcends and translates to better online experiences. Because if people have a good time, they share and talk about it with friends, they talk about it on places that people, particularly search engines, go and look, and that's a really positive thing for you and your reputation. You don't have to do anything crazy cool online to achieve that, because it's people being people. To your point, it's human.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And that for me, I hear bring the offline online, which I love as a kind of way of approaching this. And Casey, dealing with food, bacon, and lifestyle, you must be doing this a lot.
Yeah, it's never boring. There's even a lot of food bloggers on the call today. We always just want to try to tell bloggers, and I know that Jen mentioned this very briefly. EAT is really more about the page quality, not the rankings, and I think that's really where a lot of bloggers are confused when they're looking at this information where it's new to them. We're seeing that just in a live stream today, is that our goal here is to just make sure that you are a highest meets and needs blogger in many cases. And when we do that, it's going to cover a lot of these EAT issues specifically. And with regards to the author, you mentioned the author profiles, which is interesting. I think that's a good segue into a question we have. We have someone asking, like, for example, how can you overdo that? Can you put too much information on your author page, or how much information is too much? And that's a really good question. And I think the answer to that is, you should always be doing this for the sake of your users. Whenever we want to project trust, or whenever we want to project, okay, you can trust me, you can trust my recipes, you can trust my expertise. How much is too much? Well, again, if you're writing 2 or 3 pages in your About Me page, listing everywhere you've been featured, and you have multiple media kits, that's probably too much. Less is more in regards to that. So if you're asking that question, how much is too much EAT? The answer is, it depends. Mm-hmm. How many times have we heard that, Jason? And that's a great answer. It depends. So
yeah. And that question was actually from Sean Martin, who goes on to say, we've had TV appearance highlights, publications, mm-hmm. we've been publishing, people featuring our work. I mean, Jen, that comes back to you saying, don't be embarrassed about it. If it's honest, truthful, and real, coming from authoritative figures within your industry, go with it. Is that about right, Jennifer?
Yeah, that's why I like the approach of having the 2 author bios, like the full page bio as well as what you have on the article, because you don't want to first of all, you don't want to overwhelm someone when they read the article and see your author bio. You kind of want to hit them with the highlights about the author. You don't need to give them the author's life story and, how they grew up on a farm and yada, yada, yada. Like, just, hit the highlights and hit the key points that show why this person is important and trustworthy. And then you can go into the fact they grew up on a farm if they want to on their longer, more expanded author page that can highlight more details about that. So that is definitely, if someone wants to say everything about themselves in a bio, that's a great thing to put off in the other page for people to click through if they want to.
So the growing up on the farm is typically something that people say about themselves that it isn't necessarily either interesting or useful in this. Sorry, go ahead, Casey, I interrupted you.
John Mueller had a great discussion on author bios, I think recently, a couple months ago, where he specifically talked about, hey, don't be afraid to use user studies to find out what your users want to see. That should determine how you determine what you want to put with your author bio. What do they want to know about you? What do they find most interesting? If you've got a very detailed author bio, great. If not, maybe that's what they want. Ask your audience whenever you can.
No, that's funny. Sorry, I mean, I actually pushed the fact that I used to be a musician and a blue dog in a cartoon because I thought that was really cool.
That's very
cool. It turns out to have been a bit. Well, it's cool, but it's a big mistake. The last of these EAT webinars, we're going to talk about with Andrea Volpini about how we are perceived writing summaries on the fly using machine learning from SERP results. And the problem is, I've identified myself so much with that I'm losing authoritativeness as an SEO because it keeps saying you're a musician.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Can we come back to the quality raters? We had a couple of questions about that, but coming back to this human idea. Question number 1 is Jeannie Hill. Do we know which countries, which languages we have these? Where are they checking this?
Dozens of countries, dozens of languages. They haven't given us more detail than that, but it's a wide range of countries and languages. They don't want it to just be in English. They want to make sure it's a wide cross-section because, we've seen cases in, years gone by where Google would do a spam action just in Germany, for example, or just in, I think Spain was another one because there's spam issues specifically targeting those countries. And so that's one of the reasons why they want the algorithms to work no matter where they are. And one of the things is they need to be able to test the algos in different countries and languages and that. So they're all over the place. And
And some people are getting quite paranoid. Somebody's asking, how can we tell if a quality rater has been on our site? Answer is you can't.
Not really, because it's not coming from a Google IP, so you can't track it that way. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, I saw this weird referral that I think may have been a quality rater, but people, the thing is, like, they're checking also results from their phones and stuff, so from whatever country they're in, so it's not coming from like Mountain View, for example.
Am I right in thinking that they've farmed all this out? So you actually have, I mean, they're not even Google employees.
No, they're all contractors, so they don't even officially work for Google. And you actually, if you go and search on some job sites, you'll actually find the companies hiring for quality raters, and you can try applying for it. And I know there's some SEOs that have managed to get in as quality raters. So.
Oh, okay. And they're
for very small periods of time, and we'll leave it. Leave it at
that. Somebody's asking about videos. They're saying, if I create a video that informs my customers about my services, or I would assume my authors or my company, Rick, do you think that would help a company having a video, or is that just something very human that Google is never going to pay any attention to?
So I don't know. I love video content. I think that the web is moving more towards video content than everything else. I mean, look at the explosion of TikTok. That's a whole new format in its own right. But that being said, video content on your site, Google is getting better at understanding video, but it's still really learning it from the context and the things that sit around it. So if your key information is sat within a video, and you have no way of nothing else describing that video or giving the search engine context of what it's about, then you really need to expect that the search engine is probably not going to learn as much as you would want it to. But it is a great tool to show people and engage people and get people having a great time on your site, sharing your site, and helping your footprint grow in that reputation piece as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I actually asked that question because the next episode, the next webinar is with Marie Haynes and particularly Lauren Baker, who's going to be talking about repurposing, and I think video is a great example of that. Casey, I don't know how much you know about the medical sphere, but a lot of medical sites are freaking out, and we've got Jim Laren here who's saying, that it's all terribly private. People don't want to show their full name, so that authority and linking people or authors perhaps even to what they're actually writing is very difficult. Is there any way through that?
There is. So, and I'll get to that. So just as an answer to the previous thing about the video is referenced 68 times in the quality reader guidelines. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, there's incorrect information being done and people want to gussy it up in a video. Like if I try to convince you that lizard people are behind the Fortune 1000 and I have a really nicely slick produced video, hey, that's going to sway a lot of people. The guidelines specifically call that out under Your Money or Your Life as something that you want to be aware of. So that's definitely read that. Now back to your question about the citations. As someone who does so much site auditing within the medical and health sphere, what we're seeing, especially for sites that were negatively impacted with things like the Medic update from August 2018 and then all the other core updates since, we need to get verified medical or health professionals to be certifying the accuracy, the veracity of that content. And so we provide links that it's medically reviewed. I cannot tell you how that has been very effective for clients that I've worked with. We really need to support anything we can by linking to a detailed author page where it's from a verified health professional, someone who is an RN, someone who's an MD, someone who has actual expertise in that area to verify what they've been doing. Sites like Hello Glow, sites like Mercola, some of the other big sites that have been hit here, they've started to bounce back, not Mercola. But let's talk about Hello Glow and some of the other sites that have really started to bounce back. The content is off the charts. It's very high quality. The problem is they weren't supporting any of their claims. So when we're looking at bringing people in to support those claims, we want to do that in as visible and as open way as we can. So, hey, if I make a claim, hey, this is going to help you with this medical conditions, I need that reviewed by a medical professional. I can't just say that stuff and have you believe it.
Okay, and that goes for kind of any kind of content, not just medical content. Just this idea, Jennifer, you were talking about inbound links, but also outbound links, saying, here's a link to a resource that supports what it is I'm saying. You need to be, accurate.
Yeah, you need to prove.
So linking out.
You need to prove what you're saying is accurate as well. And how can you do that? The easy way to do that is to link out to other authorities in your space. people who have been in the industry for a while remember there was like the big trend to, just link out to Wikipedia and Google will think whatever you're talking about is accurate, which doesn't really work in theory or in practice. But do link out to things that can support what you're saying and say that, yes, what you're saying is accurate. Here's what I'm thinking about it. And here's this other important person in this industry who is trusted and is authority. And they're also, pretty much saying exactly what I'm saying.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, next question. We have Stephanie Hayes who's asked a question, but in fact, we had it before the webinar. She was called Stephanie Myers at the time. So I hope she's got married in between times. Congratulations, Stephanie. Can you talk about inline citations versus citations at the end of a piece of content, specifically for medical sites? Jennifer, sorry, excuse me. I was smiling too much.
So I've seen sites do both ways really well. It's not so much how you do it, it's that you're doing it and that you're doing it well. So including, I've seen some sites, here's what I say, and then they'll put the bracket and, supported from this article, and here's a link to it. And then I've seen other ones do, like footnote style, and at the bottom they'll be like, this site said it, and this is what they said, and so on. I think both ways can be effective, especially for medical sites, because it's so important that you're showing that whatever you're saying on a medical site is accurate and verified. So either way will work as long as you're doing it. So I would do it in whatever way is best for your users. Don't worry about so much, is it best in the middle or within the content or at the end? Do whatever makes it easiest for your readers and searchers to, go and verify what you've said.
Think about your audience and keep it human was, sorry, Casey, that comes back to keeping it human, thinking about your audience. Please do carry on, Casey. I wanted to make sure I got that in.
Yeah, no problem. And this is a great question because it's, again, our goal is always to try to find a direct statement from Google on all these whenever we can. And fortunately, John Mueller has done so many ridiculous Google webinars or Hangouts. He covers a lot of this stuff. So he just had a Hangout just a couple months ago where he specifically said that, in his opinion, inline citations are always better because it flows naturally with the content. Again, he didn't recommend one over the other. He just said that, when I'm looking through content, if you're making a claim, let's just go ahead and have a bracketed citation right there in the content. If you want to include footnotes at the end, awesome. But for what it's worth, I always tend to say, hey, if Google's going to actually make the time to answer and provide us something, we'll just do it that way.
I think it's because Wikipedia model is so popular and it puts it at the end. But personally, that's not the way I like it, because how often are you reading something on Wikipedia and you'll click and try to open a new tab, and then you realize it's just, putting it at the bottom of the page. So personally, I'm a big fan of inline citations because Wikipedia drives me crazy. But
absolutely lovely. Yeah. Sorry, coming back to medical sites, Rick, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
I would immediately think, okay, I'm selling, shoes, whatever it might be. Not so sensitive as medical, but if I set the bar as high as I would if I were a medical site, is that not a good way to approach it?
Yeah. Well, I think first thing to remember with medical sites, and particularly working with some of the big pharma sites, they are so heavily regulated that things they have to say when they make claims and things like that has to be backed up. Legally, they cannot make those claims unless they have proof or they can link it back to a clinical trial or study. So the best examples of high quality content are like that. So everything else gets judged or can be judged on that sort of yardstick. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you take that specific approach and apply it to fashion or beauty or whatever, and have independent citations in a particular clinical trial format, etc. No, but if you lift the quality of your content and say, well, actually, we think that having a leather jacket over a black dress is great. Why? Because this influencer over here that we think is cool and we trust also says it, and we think we agree with them. That cannot be a bad thing. Purely thinking from a user perspective, right? Hey, we think this, go and find out more over there. And it's that bringing together, it's that showing that you have something valuable to add to the conversation. And importantly, expand the search engine's understanding of the thing that you are describing, which is ultimately what the search engine is now trying to achieve with everything to do with the knowledge of entities and everything in between. Then that has to be helpful to you, right? I can't see a world where that isn't helpful.
Oh, it's a brilliant reply. I love that. That was great. And I've got a wonderful question now that I love for two reasons. One is Tiago Goncalves has a name that I can hardly say. Secondly, he's addressing it directly to Jennifer, so I don't have the choice. And thirdly, it's really well written. So I'm going to read it properly. Do you believe that the page location of the author's bio on an article influences its prior assumption of credibility and trustworthiness of its content, in brackets, above the fold versus footnote?
I don't think so. And this comes down to thinking about what's best for the users, because I've seen this trend in like the last 2 or 3 months, I think. What happens is I land on a page and I see the author bio at the very top underneath the headline. And the first thing I think is there's a technical issue. The article didn't load, and I hit reload. And what's actually is they're putting the author bio for each purposes at the top. Don't do this. It's awful for users. Because it leaves me with a negative impression of your website. And so always put it at the bottom. If you want to put something at the top, what I recommend is look at some of, like, I think it's New York Times editorial. When they publish an editorial of someone, they'll put like one line or a line and a half of so-and-so is the president of such and such. And then it goes into the editorial piece. So if there's some reason why it's important to highlight the author and why you think it's important for people to know who they are, then definitely, add a little line at the very top. But otherwise, I would always put the author bio at the bottom. Don't put it at the top. Brilliant. Because people think it's technical.
But then you could actually have 3 author bios. You would have the one at the top, which is 1 sentence, one at the bottom, which is 3 sentences, and then the full whack with "I grew up on a farm" on the page.
Yeah, I think the problem is so many people get so hung up on Google that a lot of times they kind of lose sight that at the end of the day, yeah, you want your site to rank in Google, but your content is there for users, not Google. So you need to make sure that you're meeting the needs of the users as well as Google.
And I think there's a self-fulfilling prophecy here. If you meet the needs of the user first and foremost, the user then shares that, creates a footprint around you that you'd want, that helps you rank better in Google, gives Google the trust and credibility. So focus on Google. You're at the detriment of your users. You are not going to get the signals that you need for Google to want to bring you forward in the first place, or it's going to be challenging for you.
Yeah, because Google wants to serve what's great for the users. And if you're serving what's great for Google but not the users, it's going to eventually reflect that in the rankings with how they're testing algos and stuff, even if it's not something specific to now.
For sure.
I mean, they're saying, Google basically saying, we want to give the best solution to our users. And it just happens that some of their users are your audience. And so you're saying to Google, hey, and that brings me on to the next question is, we're basically saying to Google, can you please recommend us? Would that be a fair way to assess it, Jennifer? Yeah. If you want to be recommended by Google,
I think so, because Google wants to give the most trustworthy sites at the top of the search results, because we saw this a few years ago when a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff were ranking at the top of the search results over reputable over more reputable
about the lizard people
over more reputable results. And at the end of the day, Google needs to make sure that their searchers can trust the search results, because if you get crappy search results, you're going to start using, Bing or DuckDuckGo or any of the other search engines and not use Google. And that's not good for Google. So, why SEOs lament, oh, they're not ranking my stuff at the top. And even though it's a little bit on the spammy side, well, it's because Google needs to make sure that they are serving content that is, trustworthy and good for the users. So,
which is actually a lovely way of saying it. I mean, basically, kind of you're saying is Google and Bing want to be expert, authoritative, and trustworthy themselves faced with their users, and they're piggybacking off ours, basically. Would that be fair, Casey?
And that's very fair. That's a very good. Wow. See, Jason on it today, and it's early over there, right?
No, it's late.
Oh, it is late. It's right. So you okay? Okay, that's better because wow, that was good.
I've been thinking all day.
Done. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Nice.
Brilliant stuff.
Well,
Rick, you were saying something.
Yeah, I think if you think about the role of search engines now, the role of search engines is task-based. It's to help people achieve things that they want to do. And people are getting, consumer behaviors change. People just want to get on and do stuff. The rise of answers and direct answers in search results is a clear indication that people just want to get on and find information, move to the next thing and move through that journey. So And look, Google doesn't always get it right. And there are tons of examples where Google doesn't get it right because it's believed the signals, and signals then, if Google says this is the right answer to the thing, then everyone shares that as like the right answer, even if it's wrong. And that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of problems. But Google's goal is to connect people with the right information because it helps that person achieve the task, move further down the funnel, and keep using Google. So if you approach search in the mindset of like, how does my site, how does my business, what am I doing? How does that help that person find out more? How does that person help that person decide what X product they want over Y, and provide valuable conversation to that? Then that's the way I see to do it. And I think we often forget that because it's entirely user centric and not so search engine focused.
And would you imagine that EAT would be a natural byproduct of you doing that?
Well, personally, it's why I think Google say that there is no specific ranking factor, because actually EAT is a concept. It's a thing that you can do by satisfying the criteria, building all the signals that then position you as a subject matter expert, and that is what puts you at the top. Doing EAT is being a great author, engaging your users in a way that is valuable, and that has doing that at the front and center of everything you do. I think the moment you start looking at, well, I'm going to optimize this in this specific way to do this, you're thinking less about the user and more about the search engine. That's not in the interest of EAT.
Brilliant, thank you. Casey, you were going to say something, I think, there, or am I?
No, I'm always going to say something, but yeah, and very good point by Rick. I think though, and maybe Jen could back me up on this, there are things that we could do on page to kind of provide a little bit more emphasis on EAT when we're looking at that. But it's more about boosting page quality, not rankings. And I've said that before, is that using things like jump links, making sure that our content is free of spelling and grammar errors, making sure that we've put captions on our photos, making sure that alt tags are correct. I mean, using schema, just writing good quality content, and really making sure that we're dialing back the ads, and that if we are using ads, we're labeling them. Those little things are going to significantly increase your inherent EAT, both on page and just kind of as a tangential quality as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned ads, and that's Google actually makes a lot of references to ads in the moderator guidelines, and they say that, hey, we understand that sites need to have ads, and they're going to have ads on their site, and it's fine. Like, what they don't want to see is really spammy ads, like the Taboola style ads where it's like really gross images just to draw people's attention. If your ads are high quality, there's nothing wrong with it, and it doesn't impact quality raters rating your sites whatsoever. Google is perfectly fine with ads, so I just wanted to throw that out there because Casey mentioned.
It would be terribly ironic if they weren't, given that they've got boatloads of ads on their pages. We have one very last question, and then we can finish it there. We're talking about voice search because you were talking about feature snippets earlier on. I think and Rick was talking about task-driven search. And the person, Mark Domer, cites 50% of search is supposed to be voice searches by the end of 2020. I don't know if any of you have comments about that, but I know where that comes from, and I've got a good idea of how wrong that is. Rick?
Yeah, so voice search, it's interesting. So forget that specific result, that specific study. There is evidence that voice search is increasing. Now, I don't think it's going to be, or I don't know, I'm not going to say it's 50%, but there is evidence that is happening in terms of number of smart speaker sales and all that kind of thing. So whether you think it's the thing that you should be focusing on above nothing else, it's a growing channel. But I think that's the important thing. It's a format, it's a device, it is a way to engage with search, but it is not in and of itself search. Actually, all the things that power voice, all of the great things that present you back as an answer to a person are still all the great things that present you back as an answer when someone types the question in or does an image search for something. It's just that it's presented back in a different format to satisfy the engagement of that user at that time. What does that mean? It means that if you're seen as an authoritative source of information, you answer the right questions. By the way, really crazy point. Brands don't answer questions about their own brands. It's crazy to see how many times you Google something and it's not the brand actually answering the question. Like, why the hell not? They are the authority on that matter, but they just don't answer it. So if you're taking that approach, you're answering these questions, that shouldn't stop you from using voice, but I wouldn't say it's a different approach in and of itself to text-based search and just becoming the answer in that regard.
I mean, the thing about voice is it hooks into the feature snippets is when Google's got only one shot at it, they need to make sure that it's right, expert, that it's authoritative, and that it's trustworthy. Would that be fair, Jennifer?
Yes, but you also have to consider that when people are doing voice searches, they're not looking for in-depth content. They're not looking for how to cure cancer.
Yeah.
They're looking for, how do I
Snippets.
hard boil an egg, or, super simple things that, can be answered in a featured snippet. They're not doing detailed research. There's not going to be a lot of your money or your life type searches that are going to pop up for that. I think it's important that it's, a channel you keep an eye on for sure. But again, that comes down to, if you have the featured snippet, you're going to do well in voice search. If you don't, not so much. But again,
Absolutely.
It's super simple.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you. That brings us to the end of this one. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Rick. And thank you, Casey. That was an amazing start to this 4 hours of EAT. Because we're now going to be moving on to content with Marie Haynes, Lauren Baker, and Nick Ranger. And the feature snippet will come on again right at the end with my session, because I'm pretty keen on those today. So thank you for coming along.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jason.
You were
Thanks
all
for having me.
awesome. That was really cool. And we've hit one hour on the dot. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Take it easy, everyone.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
See you soon, everyone. Take care.
Hey, now we've got the screen. The screens are going around like that. This is beautiful.